Jonah didn't understand what the doctor was going on about. Or maybe he just didn't want to believe it. At that point, he wasn't too sure. But the doctor was certain about what he had seen, and his discovery was a shocking one. What was it that caused his wife's stomach to grow the way it did? Was it related to her pregnancy? Or was there more to it? When his wife, L.A., told him that their attempts had finally worked out, Jonah was delighted. They had been trying for a baby since their honeymoon, and now their dream was finally a reality. They thought they had planned for everything, but they weren't prepared for what the doctor would find once the baby was born. The first part of L.A.'s pregnancy was relatively normal. She suffered from all the usual symptoms, but hardly complained about them. However, Jonah did notice something. He had never spent much time around a pregnant woman before, but he felt that his wife's symptoms were a little more severe than most. Was he right? Or was he just imagining things? When L.A. was about 2 months along, she approached her husband and asked him an unexpected question. She showed him her stomach and asked if he thought it was normal for her to be showing so early on. Jonah was a little shocked, but it wasn't because of her question. It was because she was actually starting to show. At first, they just brushed it off, but when L.A. was 4 months in, they knew they couldn't ignore it anymore. Her stomach had grown a lot over that time, so no one could blame them for thinking this wrong. It wasn't normal for her to be so big at stage. But this was only the beginning. With fear knotting his stomach, Jonah made an appointment with L's gynecologist. They had tried so hard to get to this point that he didn't want to take any chances. All he wanted was for his wife to get checked out. He just wanted the doctor to tell them that everything was fine and to send them on their way. But that might not have been the best thing he could have hoped for. The doctor ran some tests and did an ultrasound before telling Jonah exactly what he wanted to hear. He gave Ellie and the baby a clean bill of health before sending them on their way. But before they left, the doctor decided to give them a word of warning. What did he have to say? And how would it affect the rest of her pregnancy? The doctor told the couple that their pregnancy seemed to be high risk. He agreed that the growth rate was far from normal, and he suspected that things would get worse before they got better. He wanted Ellie to come in more regularly than any other woman would, so he could keep an eye on the situation. And he warned that she might need to spend her last month on bed rest. However, the problems didn't stop there. Elle's stomach kept growing, and it had gotten to the point where people thought that she was close to her due date, even though she wasn't anywhere near it. Her family members and co-workers started expressing their concerns, stating that this was nowhere near what she should look like. Jonah had to agree that they were right. Ellie's belly was gigantic, and it was starting to wear her down. It seemed like she was carrying far more than one baby, even though the doctor was sure that it wasn't the case. But if he was right, then what was causing her to grow like that? Was something else going on within her body? After another visit to the doctor, he started to change his mind about nothing being wrong with L.A. and the baby. Even he was shocked by the state that she was in. So he decided to run some additional tests. His main focus was her Hg levels. Human chorionic gonadotropin hormone usually increases during the first trimester of pregnancy, and he hoped it would give him a clue about what was happening. It took a few days for the results to return, but when the doctor called, he had some shocking information to share. The test results indicated that there was nothing wrong with L.A. or the baby. But if that was the case, then why was her stomach so huge? What on earth was the doctor missing? The doctor advised the couple to just wait it out. He knew that it wasn't what they wanted to hear, but he had absolutely nothing else to offer them. He had run every test he could think of and found nothing. He even checked for cancers that produce similar symptoms. However, those results were negative as well. So what was causing this? At 6 months, L.A. went in for her final scan. And that was when the first piece of the puzzle exposed itself. At first, the doctor kept quiet because he wasn't too sure what he was looking at. But when Jonah began to question him, he realized that it was no longer an option. He needed to tell them what he saw. The doctor explained that the baby's stomach was larger than usual. That was why Elle's stomach kept growing. As the baby got bigger, so did its belly. Also explained why her symptoms were so severe. But at that point in time, the doctor didn't really know what he was dealing with. All he could say was that he was incredibly concerned. Once again, the doctor told the couple that they needed to wait and see what happened. But he felt that the time had come for LA to be put on bed rest. He was worried about the weight she was carrying and the effects it would have on her body. He had no idea that her weight should have been the least of his concerns. LA wasn't too pleased about spending the next 2 months on her back, and Jonah couldn't blame her. He knew how active she was and hated the fact that she needed to be locked away. But he would do his best to ensure that she was comfortable and that she had everything she needed. If only he knew what it was that she needed. The couple got closer to their due date. They started to get anxious. They had no idea what to expect now that their baby's belly was larger than usual. They were hoping for a home birth, and they even had everything planned out for it. But from the looks of things, that wasn't going to happen. LA's stomach was massive. It had swollen to nearly twice the size that it should have been, and that was more than concerning. However, the doctor did come to visit them on occasion, and he kept assuring the couple that everything would be fine. But for some reason, Jonah didn't believe him. Was he right to have doubts? Jonah could see the fear that was hidden within the doctor's eyes. He could tell that the doctor didn't even believe his own lies. And he could tell that the situation was more severe than they were being led to believe. That frightened him. It had him tossing and turning every night. But he also knew that there was nothing he could do about it. When the big day finally arrived, Jonah was more nervous than ever before. He was prepared for the delivery, but he wasn't prepared for what would follow. Elle's water broke, and Jonah rushed her to the hospital, where the doctor was ready and waiting. But were any of them actually prepared for what would happen? Elle's labor was long and arduous. The pain Jonah felt in his hand was nothing compared to what her pained screams were doing to his heart. But then, the baby's head finally breached. It was only a matter of time now. What Jonah didn't know was that this was just the beginning of their problem. Ellie wasn't out of the woods just yet. The doctor was screaming orders at the nurses, and before long, the room around them became a disaster area. People were running around like headless chickens, and the chaos that erupted was enough to make Jonah's head spin. But before the dizziness could overwhelm him, the doctor said something that had everyone freezing in their tracks. "We need to get her to the operating room now." Jonah watched in horror as the doctor started the surgery. But he stood by his wife's side the entire time. He held her hand and promised her that everything would be fine. But when he saw the doctor's face twisted in shock, he knew that he had just lied. Things wouldn't be okay. Something was wrong with the baby. The evidence was written all over the doctor's face. The baby was handed over to one of the nurses, who quickly took him out of the room. Jonah tried to figure out where they had gone when another nurse met his gaze. With a firm grip on his elbow, she escorted him out of the room and told him that the doctor needed to have a word with him. What did the man have to say? The doctor informed Jonah that something was wrong with the baby. Jonah asked the man to give him more detail, to tell him exactly what it was that was going on. But the doctor simply said that the baby looked far from normal. In a fit of rage, Jonah grabbed the doctor and pinned him to the wall as he demanded answers. The doctor then told Jonah that there was something inside the baby's stomach. That was why Elle got so big during her pregnancy. That was why the baby's belly was bigger during the last ultrasound. It was also why his wife needed an emergency C-section. There was simply no way she would have been able to push the baby out. After hearing what the doctor had to say, Jonah rushed back into the operating room. He needed to share this information with his wife. He needed her to be there so she could hear what the doctor had to say next. But neither of them was prepared for what they were about to face. What would the doctor say? The doctor told the couple that their baby had a parasitic twin. During the pregnancy, it absorbed the second baby, and that was why its stomach was so big. They only had two options. Or they could abandon the baby and try again. Or they could try to rectify the situation with surgery. What would they choose? Jonah asked about the surgery and the chances of survival. But the doctor's answer wasn't the most comforting. The doctor told them that multiple surgeries would be needed over a period of a year. Their baby was just too small to handle it all at once, and the chances of survival weren't too good either. What would his parents do? In order to protect the privacy of those depicted, some names, locations, and identifying characteristics have been changed and are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblances to actual events, or places, or persons, living or dead, are entirely coincidental.